President Thabo Mbeki speaks about how Zimbabwe helped South Africa during the apartheid days. Listen to this clip.
Oliver Tambo attended the ceremony to lower the British flag and raise the Zimbabwe flag in 1980, April. And the very same day, day one of the independence of Zimbabwe, he met with Prime Minister Mugabe and said to him, now Zimbabwe is independent. Let's go back to the question that you raised in 1978. The need for Zimbabwe to help to support our struggle in South Africa. So President Mugabe said, Prime Minister Mugabe said to him, look, if you ask for permission from me that the ANC must operate from Zimbabwe, I will say wait. Because you can see, we are carrying so many of Smith's people, like the ones I've mentioned, many others. Give us time, those people will disappear, and then it becomes more easier for you to operate from Zimbabwe. He said, if you ask me, that's the response I'll give you. But rather than asking me, he says, why don't you send some of your people to Zimbabwe now to make an assessment, for the ANC to make an assessment for itself as to whether it can operate. So you don't have to depend on Robert Mugabe. So OR came back to Lusaka and reported this, and we said, very good idea. And indeed we went to Zimbabwe. I was in that delegation, which went to Zimbabwe to assess the situation to see whether we can operate. Yeah. So that was in the very first month of the independence of Zimbabwe. So we stayed in Zimbabwe for 2 weeks or so, wandered around, talked to people, went back to Lusaka and said, of course we can always operate in Zimbabwe. Some operations would have to be underground. Some of them would have to be open above ground. But of course we can. So fine. So OR then asked, we had to go back to talk to Prime Minister Mugabe about that. And I went with him. Now, comrades, I'm talking about April, May 1980. This is a new, young Zimbabwe. Across the border, the Limpopo, you have an apartheid regime which is intensely hostile to this government that's taken over in Zimbabwe. And obviously very intensely hostile similarly to the ANC. But we're saying, despite that, what can be done? So we came back and met with President Mugabe, Prime Minister. As it happens, he was accompanied by the current president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, who was at the time Minister of National Security. And so OR says to Prime Minister Mugabe, we can operate. So Prime Minister Mugabe says, well, okay, if that's your decision, fine. Now why don't we arrange that Thabo here and Emmerson must sit together and work out how you are going to operate. Now, comrades, I'm saying all of these things. I don't think they've been said before. We worked out a system of cooperation, which meant Zimbabwe Defense Force actually moved a battalion of the army to the banks of the Limpopo. The reason for that was that we could then bring in weapons from Zambia into Zimbabwe, which the Zimbabwe army would pick up at the border, take them through Zimbabwe to that battalion, so that our people would then come into Zimbabwe carrying no weapons. Instead, the Zimbabwe government would issue them with false identity cards. There were a lot of roadblocks at that time. So as they go through as Zimbabweans and collect their weapons on the banks of the Limpopo. I'm saying this is April, May 1980. There were other decisions that were taken, like the Zimbabwe government would issue us with passports which identify some of us as Zimbabwean, in order to facilitate movement in the context of any matter that would be sensitive. So instead of me traveling as Thabo Mbeki to some secret meeting somewhere in the world, I would travel as Patrick Joao
You know, one of the most controversial issues or discussion one can ever attempt to have in South Africa currently, it is the relationship between Zimbabwe and South Africa. Or rather, should we say, a relationship between South Africans and Zimbabweans. You guys should know that from the stats, it has been revealed that about close to 4 even to 5 million Zimbabweans currently find themselves in South Africa. And this has led to quite a number of pressure points and confrontations. Sometimes some of these confrontations have been physical, with casualties in some instances. Because if you can imagine, if you're going to have a situation about 4 to 5 million Zimbabweans who find themselves in South Africa, that is likely to cause one conflict in one way or another. Because you must understand, these are the people who come here, not necessarily because they've got certain skills that are scarce, but these are the people who come here because they're looking to fend and make a living. Now they're coming into a country whereby already the majority of black people in this country are already struggling. Then it means you find yourself in a situation where there's a contestation between these Zimbabwean nationals and the South Africans. Contestations over the limited resources. And said is that the majority of resources are in the hands of the white minority. Therefore, leaving black South Africans to fight off against the Zimbabweans in this country. And sadly, you cannot run away from the fact that dangerous crimes, such as hijacking and stuff, you'd find that Zimbabweans have populated those crimes. Now, therefore, it raises the tensions between South Africans and the Zimbabweans. You've seen with the Operation Tutula, we've seen with March on March, whereby even now, facilities such as public health care and education have become overburdened. Okay? So now, each time when South Africans raise these frustrations, you'll get people like Rutendo, Julius Malema, and others will say, but Zimbabwe helped South Africa during the difficult times of apartheid and stuff. So it's important that sometimes we get the historical context. So when here Thabo Mbeki was giving his historical context of how Zimbabwe helped South Africa, I want to get your views, guys, emanating from what Thabo Mbeki has said. What do you make of that? And then, of course, you apply it to the current context. What do you make of it, and what should be the way forward? Thank you guys for tuning in. My name is Thabo Skosana. The name of the platform is Wilabansundu, the voice for Africans. If you guys like this content, please join to become a member. There's different categories of membership. You can buy me the super thanks. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you very much, guys.